Hello, good morning, and welcome to Unacademy IAS, a one-stop destination for all the English medium civil services aspirants. Welcome to another session of Hindu News Analysis dated 16th September 2024. And in today's international edition, I have taken these 9 articles for discussion. Some of them will be a detailed discussion. For example, the first and second article we will have a detailed discussion, and the remaining articles based on the requirement we will look at the important information associated with the articles. But before I start the discussion, whenever you talk about UPSC civil services examination, there are certain subjects which are very much relevant. The important subjects to crack the civil service examination are polity, economy, the history, as well as geography. And to assist you and aid you in the preparation for the civil service examination, starting today, we will be launching the UPSC Simplified Initiative. Please make a note of this. Every Monday and Tuesday at 8 p.m, we will be providing you information, that is through video, will be providing you certain important static concepts from these very important subjects. That is the first very important announcement. Second very important announcement, in the last couple of days, there is a lot of discussion that is happening regarding the GST issue involving bun as well as the cream bun. Now, in today's session, I will not be covering that particular topic because it did not appear in the Hindu newspaper edition today. But today afternoon, we will be making a separate video on this. Please do watch out. Lot of important critical aspects associated with the GST will be discussing in that. So with this announcement, let me start the discussion. I am covering the articles spanning from the science and technology, ecology and environment, polity as well as economy, to ensure that this will be a one-stop destination for all of your current affairs requirements. And you do not have to go back and start reading multiple resources to cover multiple aspects associated with the articles. If you like these initiatives, do hit the like button, and if you yet to subscribe to our YouTube channel, kindly do it right now. Let me start the discussion. The first very important article, a human touch to India's mineral ecosystem. What is the issue all about? Let's have a comprehensive discussion here. Point number 1, there are multiple mineral blocks which are set up for auctions. Please understand this. Earlier, whenever the mineral blocks were supposed to be allocated, for example, coal, the government used to allocate the mineral blocks. But after the Supreme Court of India's judgment regarding the coal scam, the government of India changed the system, whole system was changed, and rather than allocating, we shifted to the concept of auctioning. That is essentially, we will allow the bidders to compete, and the one who will bid for the highest price, highest revenue would be generated by the government in the form of, let's say, the bidding process. So that was the whole idea of shifting to a new system. But with this, there was also concern raised. If lot of these minerals are mined out, obviously in the surrounding region where the mining will happen, there will be certain ecological impact or environmental impact. Because of, let's say, the pollution, because of the dust, etc., the population in the region would be affected. There would also be a displacement of certain populations such as tribal population, etc. In order to address these issues, the government amended the MMDR Act, Mines and Minerals Development and Regulation Act of 1957 was amended in the year 2015, and with this amendment, the government introduced the concept of the District Mineral Foundation, DMF, District Mineral Foundation. And in the same year, that is in the 2015, government also announced a new initiative by the name of PM KKY, that is a Pradhana Mantri Khanij Kshetra Kalyan Yojana. I will repeat it again, Pradhana Mantri Khanij Kshetra Kalyan Yojana. And what was the concept here? in case of the DMF, please understand, the districts where mining will happen, the state government now was allowed to set up a district mineral foundation, DMF. And what would be the composition of the DMF? The members in the DMF, it was left out to the prerogative of the state governments. So, the state governments would be deciding the composition of the DMF. But the importance of the DMF was that whenever the mining licenses were allocated by the center, whenever the mining was allowed to be conducted by, let's say, a company in this particular district, certain percentage of royalty fees that the company would be paying to the government, they would contribute to the DMF, that is essentially to the fund. I'll repeat it again, understand this carefully. Imagine here is a mine. This particular mine is allocated to, let's say, a private sector company A. And because the company A is using this mine, they will have to pay certain royalty. That is, in simple terms, the fees for using the mine. Certain percentage of the royalty was decided and they were supposed to contribute to the DMF that would be used under the Yojana PMKKY. And how much was the fees? Please understand, if the mining was allocated before 12th January 2015, if it was allocated before 12th January 2015, then whatever is the royalty fees, 30% of the royalty fees that would be, that is again in addition to royalty fees, 30% addition of this royalty fees, the company would be paying to the DMF. And if it was allocated, that is the mining rights were allocated after 12th January 2015, this was reduced to 10%. It was essentially reduced to 10%. So, over a period of time, the PMKKY has been implemented. There are more than 600 the DMFs which have been established. And according to the DMF database which has been prepared by the government, I'll come to that in a minute. The data simply says 645 DMFs have been established across 23 states. 645 DMFs have been established across the 23 states, which essentially means in more than 600 districts where mining is being conducted, the DMF has been set up and the royalties, that is a percentage of royalty amount that has been paid by these mining companies, it is being collected by the DMF. Now, next important point, once the funds are collected, once the money is collected, what will be the use of the money? Under PMKKY, how the funds would be utilized? Please understand, under PMKKY, the government has classified how the funds are supposed to be utilized into two categories. One is called as high priority areas and other priority areas. High priority areas and other priority areas. And according to the guidelines, the 70% of the funds for the high priority areas, right, these are the projects. That is, you are supposed to use the funds for drinking water supply. You are supposed to use it for environmental preservation, pollution control measures, etc., etc. Essentially, there are more than 10 areas where the funds are supposed to be utilized. And please make a note of this. The guidelines regarding PMKKY have been revised by the government in the month of January 2024 itself. And remaining funds shall be utilized in other priority areas as well. That is for physical infrastructure, for irrigation infrastructure, energy related infrastructure, etc., etc. So, in these manner or in this particular way, the funds which are collected under the DMF or the District Mineral Foundation have to be utilized. Now, what is the discussion that has been happening here? The discussion is simple here. Since the announcement of DMF, that is with the amendment to the MMDR, we have announced a DMF and we also implemented the PMKKY scheme in the year 2015. And in the year 2024, that is 16th September 2024, this initiative would be entering into its 10th year of implementation. The scheme or the Yojana would be entering into its 10th year of implementation. And in this particular context, the Union Minister of Coal and Mines, Mr. G. Kishan Reddy has written an article here. The important points to make a note out of all of these points given here. 1. With implementation of DMF in a span of last 9 years, we have been able to collect more than 1 lakh crore rupees, right, in this particular trust fund. I repeat this particular point. More than 1 lakh crore rupees has been collected under this. Compared to earlier system, where the mines were basically allocated, and according to the Supreme Court of India's judgment, there was a huge amount of revenue loss. Huge amount of a revenue loss for the government exchequer. Now government is auctioning the mines, and with the auctioning of the mines, we have also set up the scheme or the yojana where more than 1 lakh crore rupees are collected, and these are utilized for various types of projects. And according to the DMF database, this was the point I was trying to tell you earlier. The central government has created a centralized database by the name of DMF portal. And according to the DMF portal, have a look at this. The total amount of funds collected are over 84,947 crore rupees. Please understand, in the article, the minister is saying the updated data is more than 1 lakh crore rupees. Because some of you will basically say, sir, 1 minute ago you said more than 1 lakh crore, but the portal says only 84,000 crores. So the portal also says the updation of data is under the process, and it will be done very soon. So more than 84,000 crore rupees have been collected, and more than 73,000 crore rupees have been allocated, and the utilization is more than 46,000 crore, and the number of projects which have been sanctioned and completed is right 3,19,000 and 1.7 lakh projects respectively. In addition to this, please make a note of which are the states where majority of the funds have been collected. Majority of the funds have been collected from the state of Odisha. It has been collected in Jharkhand. It has been collected in Chhattisgarh. These are the 3 states which are leading in terms of the collection under the DMF. Now, next important point mentioned in the article is, with implementation of the DMF, we have seen new types of initiatives which are being undertaken in multiple states. What are the new types of initiatives the minister is talking about here? In some of the DMFs, it has been seen that they are trying to go for inclusivity. They are trying to go for inclusivity. How? Some of the members who are elected are being included in the DMF. Some of the members who are simply the workers are being included in the DMF. So the minister is saying, we will basically try to study these models and try to make it as a standard across the whole of India. So point number 1, many of the DMFs, that is the district mineral foundations, they are basically approaching a concept of or using a concept of inclusivity. Second one, in many of the DMFs, it has been seen that a separate authority or a separate department is being set up, and this particular department, officials from the Public Works Department, PWDs, are being appointed, and these officials or these are the experts who are being asked to look after various projects which are being implemented by using the funds under the PMKKY. And couple of minutes ago, we have seen what kind of projects are covered under the PMKKY. Essentially, if you are wondering, sir, if I have to write in, let's say, 20 words or 15 words, how do I write it? I cannot list out all the infrastructure projects. How do I approach it? Simple. The government simply says PMKKY will ensure that the schemes which are implemented by the center and the state will be augmented through these infrastructure projects. And any kind of, let's say, impact that will be experienced by the population surrounding the mining activity, we will try to minimize it. These are the usage through the concept of a PMKKY Yojana. Okay, so first one is inclusivity. Second, many of these particular DMFs, already mentioned, the PWDs, that is officials from other departments, are being included in one department, and they are overseeing the project implementation. Third very important thing that has been mentioned here is, in many of these projects, in many of these particular projects, we are ensuring that the best practices are included and sustainable practices are included. How so? Rather than planning for a shorter duration project, now many of the DMFs are generally planning for a long duration or a plan for 3 years, 5 years are being framed. And the government of India simply says, we might use this to basically implement across all the DMFs to ensure there is a standardization of infrastructure projects across all of India rather than earlier approach of having a fragmented approach across the India. So these are certain very important points. In addition to this, the minister also says, in the coming days, we might expand the scope of usage of DMF. We want to expand the scope of usage of DMF. How so? First one, the funds within the DMF can be utilized for training athletes. It can be used for training athletes. It can be used to add to the incomes which are generated by the tribal population as well. So these are certain very important points which are mentioned in the article regarding the mineral system, or let's say the mineral ecosystem, and the funds which are generated by the government by allocation of these mineral blocks to private sector entities. Essentially, at the end of the article, the author says that the DMF system which we have established, it's a prime example of cooperative federalism between the center, state as well as the local government. It's a prime example of cooperative federalism, where all the 3 levels of the government are coming together and they are ensuring that certain projects are implemented, the best practices are adopted, the population which is affected by the mining activity is protected, etc., etc. In addition to this, the minister also says that the idea is the best example of how the governments should balance the objective of economic growth as well as the social welfare. It's a best example of balancing both of these objectives by the government. So these are certain important points associated with the mineral ecosystem, mining activity, the royalty, etc., etc. Please make a note of this. Now, associated with this, I have given a mains answer for writing practice. The number 18th question, DMF is an example of how the nations must balance between the economic growth, social welfare and the rights. Elaborate 15 marker and 250 words. How do you approach this kind of a question? Start with an introduction. Write 2 or 3 statements regarding the DMF, right? That is, it is provided under the section of MMDR Act, right? It is basically to be set up by the state government. The composition might vary from one state to another state because it is under the state, and the funds which are collected by the DMF will be utilized for the projects which are classified into 2 types like this. A very short introduction, and then in the main body you can write the importance of it. Before 2015 what used to happen, and after 2015 what is happening, the amount of funds collected by the government, how many projects are being implemented across India. You can use the data from the DMF portal, etc., etc. In addition to that, you can also give, let's say, what is to be done in the way forward. That is, for example, the government of India considering usage of DMF funds for providing the training to the athletes, for providing or augmenting the incomes of the tribal population, etc. So easily you will be able to write a very good answer within 250 words. Now, have a look at MCQ assignment number 26 also. Now, some of you basically said in the comment section in my earlier video, sir, please do not give this as assignment as a homework, please discuss in the same video. I will do that, but at the end of the session from today. So, MCQ assignment number 26, consider the following statements. The DMF has been set up in all the states and UTs in India. The composition and the function of the DMF is decided by the central government. Section 9B of the MMDR Act provides for establishment of a DMF as a non-profit body. What is the right answer to that? I will give you at the end of the session today. Till then, try to solve it. Now, what about the earlier questions? MCQ assignment number 24, the bulk deposit limits are the same for all the banks in India? No. If you remember the discussion very carefully, I said the bulk deposit value is 2 CR for scheduled commercial banks and it is 1 CR for regional rural banks. There was one student who commented basically saying that, sir, the limit has been increased from 2 CR to 3 CR. Please understand, the reason why I have said 2 CR is because in the earlier monetary policy, yes, the Reserve Bank of India has proposed to increase it to 3 CR. But if you read the headline, it simply says it plans or it aims to raise the bulk deposit limit to 3 CR from 2 CR. Proposal is there, and in fact in the article also they are saying that it is proposing. I am pretty sure it will be implemented as well. So that's the reason once it is done, you update it as 3 CR, but until June it was basically saying 2 CR only. Okay. Second statement, the external benchmarking in lending rates was recommended by the Narsimham committee. Absolutely wrong. It was recommended by Janak Raj committee. Third, the SIPs, systematic investment plans in India, are regulated by RBI. No, these are regulated by SEBI. So all the three statements are wrong. Right option will be none of them. What about MCQ assignment number 25? The bird flu is highly contagious in case of human transmission. No, this is not the case. It's not very highly contagious. India has not reported any case of human infections with the bird flu, right? It is also wrong. Couple of infections have been reported, that is a transmission into humans. The bird flu is caused by bacteria and virus. Wrong. It is caused by the virus. So all the three statements are wrong. Right option will be option D, none of the above statements. Let me go to the next article, realizing the rural urban continuum. Now what are the issues mentioned here? What are the important points? Listen to me very carefully. Whenever you talk about the government schemes, generally you will see a practice of Government of India where some of the schemes are announced only for rural population and some of the schemes are announced only for urban population. There is this kind of approach which is being followed by the government historically. Some schemes for rural India, some schemes for urban India. But the issue has been that over a period of time, we have been conducting census, and the census is conducted once every 10 years. And in the span of this particular 10 years, if one of the areas becomes a developed area, it wants to migrate from, let's say, a rural area to an urban area, then generally it is not facilitated. Automatically it does not move upwards into urban area, it will remain as a rural area itself. And whenever such kind of fragmentation policies are followed, fragmentation in the sense, we devise a policy limited to urban area, devise a scheme limited to rural area. For example, some of you will be wondering, sir, any kind of example that you can quote which I can simply say it focuses on rural and urban. For example, there is a scheme by the name of Amrut. There is a scheme by the name of Amrut, right? That is the Atal Mission for Rejuvenation, Urban Transformation. Atal Mission for Rejuvenation, Urban Transformation. If you read the name itself, you will realize that the focus of this particular scheme is urban India. And in this case, let's say one of the very important areas that is covered is liquid waste management. One of the very important areas that is covered is liquid waste management projects. And on the other side, example of, let's say, a rural India scheme or focused scheme, we have Swachh Bharat Mission, SBM. Swachh Bharat Mission, there is a component SBM rural, and in case of SBM rural, it targets only the rural population or rural villages as such. In SBM we also have SBM urban. SBM urban is also there, which targets the urban areas. So what is the author saying here? And this is nothing new, by the way. Just to give you a context here, last year in the month of March, the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council, PMEAC, Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council, there was one report that was published, and that report basically highlighted the issue of dividing the schemes into those schemes which will be applicable only for rural India and the schemes which are applicable only for urban India. In fact, the report or the survey basically mentioned that this is a wrong approach. This is a very, very wrong approach which is followed by the government of India. Some of you will be wondering, sir, why? What is the issue here? Issue is very simple here. Whenever you use the term rural India, generally the idea is that this region is underdeveloped. This region doesn't have sufficient number of jobs. This region doesn't have sufficient infrastructure, etc., etc. In a nutshell, whenever you use the term rural India, you associate that with poverty. And because that kind of a thinking has been set in within the policy making as well, whenever certain policies are formulated for rural India specifically, lot of funding is allocated, lot of funds are utilized for the implementation of the projects, etc. But don't you think this kind of a policy making which will focus only on rural and urban is a wrong approach here? Reason being, across India, you might see that there are multiple regions, let's say technically these are villages, but the per capita income in those villages is higher. The electricity access in those villages is higher. The consumption, that is in terms of, let's say, the nutritious food or even per capita food grain consumption, etc., all of that is higher. So technically it's a rural area. But if you look at the behavior of the consumers there, accessibility of infrastructure, power consumption, etc., it doesn't meet the definition of a rural, it is actually an urban area. And on the other side, if you talk about urban, that is cities, have you not seen in certain outskirts of the cities, that is, imagine if this is a city, in the outskirts areas, you will see certain regions where very poor people are generally located. Very large number of poor people are generally located. For example, the cleaners, the sweepers, the people who are working in as a household activities, etc., they generally go to the periphery of the cities to settle there. Reason being, the infrastructure is not very well developed, hence the cost of infrastructure for them, for example, housing, will be lesser, will be affordable for such population. And in lot of cities, you will find this kind of a, let's say, village-like structure, and these are called as urban villages. Village-like structure which are called as urban villages, which are actually set up in the periphery of the cities. Now, having understood this particular logic, let's apply it in the concept of a scheme or the welfare policies. So, Government of India, whenever they announce schemes, they will announce schemes specifically for rural, that is villages, and they will announce schemes for, right, let's say urban, that is cities. But the problem here is, in many of the cases, there is no synergy between the schemes. For example, I told you about the Swachh Bharat Mission, urban and rural. If you talk about SBM rural, you will see that it will basically provide financing for the liquid waste management as well as solid waste management projects. It has provisions for providing financing for liquid waste management as well as solid waste management projects. Whereas on the other side, if you talk about SBM urban, that is Swachh Bharat Mission urban component, it focuses only on the solid waste management. And Amrut focuses on the liquid waste management. Now, let's say in a particular city, that is under the urban areas, let's say a project has been approved and this particular project falls under the scheme of Amrut. And because these regions, which I call them as urban villages, these strictly do not fall under the urban category, if you propose for a project for a liquid waste management in these regions, they may not be accepted. Why? These regions are not strictly part of the urban area and these are part of, let's say, urban villages outside the urban area as such. So, argument which has been put forward by the author here is very simple. The same thing that was said by even the Economic Advisory Council, that is a PMEAC. This kind of approach of schemes of the government to divide urban and villages and specifically target this, it's a wrong approach. Rather than this, we should basically use the schemes, have synergy between all of these particular schemes. it should be targeting a region rather than urban and village like this. And if you keep on continuing to target urban and villages, or let's say urban versus rural like this, there will be certain regions where you will not see any kind of infrastructure being provided under the schemes, because it will not be covered under urban, because it is part of, even though it is part of the urban area or periphery of the urban area, it will not be covered under the rural schemes because it is not strictly classified as rural. So that is the reason population is involved, population is present in these regions, and especially the population which requires lot of assistance of the government. Hence the schemes should be revamped. So what is the way forward in case of this? The way forward are these. 1. According to the EAC-PM, Economic Advisory Council, the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council's report, there should be automatically a switch. That is, when a particular area meets certain conditions. For example, if you look at the street lights, don't you think generally very good street light accessibility or street light infrastructure is a feature of urban region? So imagine there is a village, in that particular village the access to street lighting is very good, which also means the villages has a very good access to other infrastructure as well. Because if you focus on the street line, it means you already have a good infrastructure for healthcare, right, or let's say the hospitals, or let's say education, etc. In such cases, there should automatically be shifting of these villages or rural areas into urban areas. That is one recommendation. Second recommendation is, the states or the center should follow a carrot and stick model. Carrot and stick model, again this was recommended in the PMAAC report. What is a carrot and stick model? There should be certain ministries which will withhold funding if the villages which are on the cusp of migration, if they are not implementing right infrastructure projects, try to penalize them, try to push them towards that by withholding funds. And on the other side, let's say Ministry of Housing Affairs might provide more and more funding in order to develop better, let's say, access to housing infrastructure in these areas, so that again the infrastructure will be developed, better quality infrastructure, migration into urban areas will be much better. So carrot and stick policy, carrot and stick model should be adopted by the government. Third important recommendation which has been provided in the same article, we need to make certain changes to the constitutional provisions. That is, the 73rd and 74th constitutional amendments must be made certain changes, and we should restructure how the district planning committees are actually working. How the district planning committees are supposed to work. There was a model which was proposed, they are not working efficiently now. They have become appendages to various other, let's say, bureaucracy within the districts. We should make certain changes to ensure there is a proper functioning of the district planning committees as well. So these are some of the things that you can basically write in the context of the making changes to rural urban planning process in India. Okay. Now, let me go to the next article, Science and Technology. What are AM, FM and signal modulation? I feel this is a very important article, although lot of technicalities are provided in this. Let's simplify this. And this article becomes prevalent, or let's say relevant for the civil services examination, because last month, in the month of August, the government, that is the cabinet, has approved private FM radio channels in 234 more cities. More than 730 private FM channels will be set up in all these 230 plus cities right now, according to the approvals given by the cabinet. Now, what is this FM radio channel? What is this AM? What is the technology behind it? Let's try and understand in simple words. Because this is there in the newspaper, I am explaining this. Listen to me carefully. AM stands for, AM and FM basically are type of a modulation. That is, AM stands for amplitude modulation. AM stands for amplitude modulation and FM stands for frequency modulation. Now, what is this amplitude modulation and a frequency modulation? Let's say I will drop this particular pen in a pond, or let's say in a water body. the moment I drop this particular pen, can you see this kind of event or this kind of a outcome there? There is a ripple which is created, and this particular ripple in the form of circular waves will start moving towards the outer region, that is towards the periphery of the water body. Now please understand, if you look at it at the surface level, that is instead of looking from the top, if you are within the pond and imagine this is a water level that you are looking at your eye level, what you will see is whenever the pen will drop, you will see certain wave that is created. That is, if this is the original surface, you will see the water wave moving like this. That is, a wave is created. And please understand, let me use technical terms now. The distance between this and this particular point, that is essentially the height to which the wave will reach, this is called as amplitude. This is essentially referred to as amplitude. And the distance between two tops, that is the two crests, this is called as a crest and this is called as a trough. The uppermost limit is called as a crest and the lowermost limit is called as a trough. So the distance between these two consecutive tops, or let us say consecutive bottoms, it is called as a wavelength. This is called as a wavelength. So one is amplitude, second one is a wavelength, and the third one is the frequency. Frequency essentially is the number of times. Have a look at this. It is the number of times as to the number of times through which at a particular point from the same at a particular same point, how many crests will pass. How many of these tops will pass through this particular point at one point of time, it is called as the frequency, and it is generally measured in the form of hertz. Now what are the next important points? When you drop the pen, you will see a particular height, that is water will reach up to a particular height. Now forget about the pen, what if I jump into this particular water pond? If I jump, obviously my weight is greater than this particular pen, and because the weight is greater, obviously the amount of water level, that is in case of wave, the wave will be much higher now, that is the height of the wave will be much higher, which essentially means instead of this particular nature, we will end up having a wave of this nature. Is it okay? The amplitude will be higher. So that is essentially one point, please remember this. Now what are the two types of waves here? What are the two types of technology we are talking about? FM radio and AM radio. In case of FM, please understand, we are going to make a change in the frequency. That is, how many, let us say waves will be passed, at a particular point, we will keep on changing the number of waves. For example, let us say this particular pen, I will drop after every 2 seconds in a water body. Let us say after every 2 seconds, I will keep on dropping, again one more pen after every 2 seconds. So you will see 3 waves, let us say if I drop 3 times, 3 waves at an interval of 2 seconds, and please understand, because the pen has the same weight, all the pens have the same weight here, the frequency will also be, the amplitude will also be the same, amplitude will not change, amplitude remains the same. But what if I drop 3 pens after interval of 2 seconds, then I will wait for 10 seconds and then drop 3 more pens. So obviously what will happen? You will receive certain, let us say waves in a club like this, in a group. After that there is a certain gap and again you will receive waves. But essentially what is happening here? Understand this carefully. The frequency is modulated, frequency will change, but not the amplitude. Amplitude remains the same, only the frequency changes. But on the other side, let us say once I will drop this particular pen, after that I will jump, and after that I will throw a rock of 10 kgs, after that I will throw a rock of 20 kgs, etc. Now can I simply say, at regular time intervals, if I do this, regular time intervals after 5 seconds, 5 seconds, 5 seconds like this, the frequency will remain same, but the amplitude will keep on changing. When I drop the pen, the amplitude will be smaller. After this, if I drop a rock of 1 kg, amplitude will increase. After that, if I drop a rock of, let us say 20 kgs, amplitude will increase, and after that 50, after that let us say 60, amplitude will keep on changing, and after certain number of drops that I do, I will repeat the same thing again. that is basically amplitude modulation. Now, I hope you have understood what is the concept of AM and FM here. Essentially, whenever you use a mobile phone or you are using let's say a tape recorder or a tape in essence or radio, what generally happens is either the waves, electromagnetic waves, radio waves in essence, the electromagnetic waves will be transmitted either in the form of AM or FM, and these tapes or the radios etc., they will catch these signals through the let's say antenna. They will catch these particular signals and transmit them or convert them into sound waves which we are able to listen to. This is basically the technology behind the concept of AM and FM. And please understand, because in case of FM, this is a kind of a technology that we are using. FM cannot be basically transmitted beyond certain region. FM can be transmitted, these waves can be transmitted within a very small region, and that's the reason. If you are traveling from one city to another city and if you are listening to FM radio, suddenly after certain distance, when you are at the periphery or after the periphery of a city, you will lose the signal. You will simply lose the signal. But on the other side, if you are listening to all India radio under the AM model, under the AM, doesn't matter whether you travel from one city to another city, one state to another state, you will be able to use or listen to the radio channels under the AM. So, these are certain very important points regarding the AM and FM, and that is the precise reason. Please have a look at the article now. The government of India now says in more than 230 cities, we have approved more than 700 channels now. FM channels, not AM channels, because you don't require 700 AM channels throughout India. You will require definitely as FM channels. And through these FM channels, we can provide lot of information to the listeners. We can promote cultural events or basically inculcate the cultural information amongst the listeners. In addition to this, there is one more point in the article. I would want you people to have a look at this carefully. What is that? The government of India, when they will allocate this particular FM channel to a private sector company, government says we will charge and impose a certain amount of money from all of you. And government is expecting to raise revenue to the extent of 700 plus crore rupees. That is essentially 4% of the gross revenue would be imposed by the government, and this is excluding GST, and the companies which will bid for these channels will have to pay 4% of their gross revenues to the government. So, reserve price has been determined, and the revenues that these companies will have to pay also has been determined with this announcement by the government. So, these are certain important points regarding SNT article of AM, FM radio signals. Now, let me go to the next article. NEPA death confirmed in Malappuram. Earlier also, in the previous month, I had a discussion regarding multiple types of virus diseases or viral infections which are spreading throughout India, which are cause of a concern, etc. And couple of months ago, there was one confirmed case of NEPA in the state of Kerala. Now, yesterday itself, there is one more confirmed case of a NEPA which was contracted by let's say a person, and this particular person passed away. This particular person passed away because of the infection. Now, more than 150 contacts have been asked to isolate themselves because simple reason, NEPA virus can be transmitted from one person to another person. It is a zoonotic disease. It will transmit from animals to humans, but from humans to humans also it can be transmitted through touch, etc. So, these are the certain points regarding this article. Again, beyond this, no other information has been provided. You also don't require more information, because in the earlier videos, we have discussed different types of viral diseases which are causing havoc not only in India, but also in the other countries as well. So, this is one snippet, or let us say one point regarding the prelims that you can use. Now, next article, one nation, one election will be implemented in the current term of NDA government. And in addition to this, the article also says census will also begin very, very soon. What are the important points? Very recently, a committee or a panel which was set up by government of India has submitted the report in favor of conducting simultaneous elections, or basically proposing the model of one nation, one election. One nation, one election. Now, just to give you a brief of it, what is the use of one nation, one election? Understand this carefully. Currently, in case of India, unlike let's say 1950s, when we used to have simultaneous elections, currently we do not follow that. Reason was, initially we started with the concept of simultaneous elections, but because of let's say the state governments, in some of the states, the state governments losing majority, in some of the states elections became, right, let's say a need of the hour. That's the reason the synchronous elections which were conducted earlier, we discontinued that, and currently we have a system where we have Lok Sabha elections once every 5 years, assuming the government will complete the tenure. In addition to that, we will also have the state government elections. Again, generally the concept is once every 5 years, assuming the state governments will complete the tenure of the 5 years. But the problem here is, currently the cycle has become so hectic that in multiple years we see that multiple states will go for elections, and in the same year but in different month you will also see Lok Sabha elections. For example, take 2024 itself. Very recently we have completed Lok Sabha elections, results were announced, we have a new government now, but in next couple of months you will see elections in multiple states. For example, Maharashtra, right, Jammu and Kashmir, etc. So, the concern is that we are having elections multiple times in India. Can we synchronize it? Can we ensure that all these elections at the center, at the state and even at the local level will be conducted only at once? That is the concept of one nation, one election. The current Prime Minister back in the year 2014 proposed the idea, or basically supported the idea of one nation, one election. Again in 2019 also supported the idea of one nation, one election. And very recently also in the Independence Day speech argued in favor of one nation, one election, or simultaneous elections. So, what are the benefits? Very quickly, what are the benefits of one nation, one election? First one, there will not be multiple elections, there will be one election simultaneously conducted for all the tiers of the government, which essentially means expenditure incurred to conduct elections would be controlled, would be lesser. Second, the manpower, that is essentially whenever the elections are announced, you will use a lot of manpower at the state level elections as well as the Lok Sabha elections. And whenever you are going to use the manpower, essentially let's say government officials here, lot of times the government officials, rather than doing their normal work, that is let's say clearing the projects, implementing various infrastructure projects, etc., rather than doing this, will be involved in the elections. So, there will be diversion of the resources, rather than using for the projects, development and growth related projects, we are using for other work, that is election duty. So, manpower diversion can also be reduced now with the simultaneous elections. Third one, whenever the elections are announced, the Election Commission of India announces Model Code of Conduct. And when the Model Code of Conduct is announced or is put into place, the state government as well as the central government is barred, is not allowed to announce lot of these welfare schemes or welfare policies. So, imagine a particular state is supposed to go to elections in the next 2 months. There will be a Model Code of Conduct implemented there. And a couple of months ago, we conducted or we held Lok Sabha elections. During that period of time, all over India, Model Code of Conduct has been implemented. So, for this particular state, for certain number of months, no reforms or no new initiatives which are going to provide lot of welfare to the people cannot be announced. This will delay the policy making as well as implementation of policies. Delay policies, that is one more concern. Right. So, another issue here is the voters. Imagine I am a voter in a particular state and in particular district. I've migrated out of that district, I've gone to a city and I'm settled there. Very recently the elections have been conducted. I had to go back to my place, vote and come back. And now again after 3 months or 4 months, the state legislative assemblies are supposed to be conducted. Again I'll have to travel all the way to my place to cast a vote. This will become very hectic for me, very difficult for me. That would have an impact on the voter turnout. The voter turnout. Now rather than this, if I have only one elections for state and let's say Lok Sabha, then I don't have to keep on going from my workplace to my city or my village etc. multiple times. I can go only once. So these are some of the benefits which are associated with one nation, one election. But having said so, there are also certain concerns. There are also certain concerns which have been raised regarding the concept of one nation, one election. For example, how will the voter understand? Voter education is very important. How will the voter understand? Because let's say for the last 60 plus years, that is one whole generation has gotten used to the idea of voting only once, either for the central government, that is Lok Sabha elections, or let's say state legislative assembly elections. Now you are asking a voter to cast a vote for both, that is the state as well as the Lok Sabha. There will be a lot of confusion that would be created amongst a lot of these voters because they have never experienced this kind of a thing. That is one concern. Second concern is, if for all the elections, that is at center and state, only one election is conducted, don't you think some of the regional issues, some of the regional problems or regional issues will not be highlighted now? Some of the regional problems or regional issues will not be highlighted. Because the Lok Sabha elections are being conducted, most of the times the discussion in the news, in the newspaper, etc. will be focusing on the national issue, not the regional issue. And from one region to another region, their problems will be different. Their issues would be different. They want the discussion to be focused on that, so that they can take a call based on the information provided through media, newspapers, etc. to take a call to whom to vote. So the regional issues can be ignored and the national issues can simply take over, the whole election cycle. Third concern is, do we have sufficient manpower to conduct such elections? Do we have sufficient manpower to even conduct such elections? The requirement of manpower, that is government officials, will be very huge. And finally, the fourth issue will be, what about voter or voting machines? What about the voting machines? According to the experts, if you conduct a simultaneous elections now, you will require almost 3 to 4 times the number of voting machines that is being used right now. Because there is no simultaneous elections, we have voter machines. But if you conduct simultaneous elections, then you will have to have multiple voting machines across India. So the number of voting machines that would be required will be 3 to 4 times the number of machines that we have now. So these are some of the concerns, these are some of the benefits associated with one nation, one election. And the bureaucrat who has given the statement says that in the current term of the government, in the current tenure of the government, they will be implementing one nation, one election. In addition to this, the bureaucrat also stated that census will be conducted now. Census will also be conducted because the last time the census was conducted for which the data is available is 2011. After that, the government was supposed to start the census exercise, but there was a pandemic. As a result of this, conducting census was postponed by the government. So far, it is yet to be conducted. And very recently, in the newspaper itself, you must have come across this. A Standing Committee on Statistics, SCOS, Standing Committee on Statistics has raised certain concerns regarding the data availability in India. One of the data that they wanted, one of the point or sets of data that they required to make recommendation to the government was basically the census data. This was in fact discussed very recently in the context of Hindu newspaper, again why the government of India dissolved the Standing Committee on Statistics. Okay. So these are certain points regarding the article here. Let me go to the next article. ESG, environmental, social, governance ratings can boost business growth. What is the concept here? Please understand, there is a new type of investment profiling that has emerged in recent times, concept of ESG. E stands for environment, S stands for social, and G stands for governance. G stands for governance. And what is the meaning of ESG? Please understand this. There are certain investors in the market who will make investment decisions based on how the companies are performing under the parameters of the ESG. That is, let's say I am an investor, a foreign portfolio investor who has huge amount of money. I want to invest in India, but I want to invest in only those companies which have a policy to protect environment, which are worried about the emissions, they are trying to contain the emissions, which have very good governance structure or governance standards, which have a very good employee-employer relationship. They are worried about the population which is there surrounding their manufacturing units, etc., etc. That is in a nutshell called as environmental, social and governance norms. So, there is a rising trend not only in India, but also in the global market where investors are investing based on the ESG parameters. Now, in the context of India, please make a note of this. Earlier, there was a concept called as a business responsibility regulations or business responsibility reporting, BRR. There were two different types of reporting. One was called as a BRR and the second one was or is CSR, corporate social responsibility. So, one was BRR and the second one was CSR. But SEBI in the year 2022, Securities Exchange Board of India in 2022 restructured the concept of a BRR and introduced new set of guidelines by the name of BRSR. BRSR. What is BRSR? It stands for business responsibility and sustainability reporting This is essentially the long form of BRSR. And when was it implemented? It was implemented from 2022. That is essentially from the financial year 22, they were supposed to start reporting regarding the BRSR. Okay, so 22 and 23. So, what was the logic here? Every company, certain framework was provided and what kind of measures they are taking to meet ESG parameters. For example, is the company taking certain initiative where they are trying to control, let's say, the greenhouse emissions? Are they implementing a policy where they are trying to improve the quality of data they are submitting to the government? Are they improving in terms of transparency? Are they implementing policies to make the life of the workers much better when they are working on the, let's say, grass level, that is basically at the grassroots level, that is at the manufacturing unit? So, these kind of reforms which will be implemented, policies which will be implemented by the companies, they will have to report under the concept called as a BRSR. And SEBI did not stop here. Next year, in the year 2023, there was one more set of framework that was announced by SEBI, essentially for those particular companies which would be ranking or rating these particular companies. The rating, that is the ESG rating providers, those companies are called as ESG rating providers. That is, there are certain institutions which will basically evaluate, how the companies are able to meet on what parameters they are implementing, how effective these policies are, etc., etc. So, ESG rating providers became very famous at that point of time. So, the SEBI simply said, we will implement certain framework for you as well, and according to the framework, they are supposed to provide rating in the range of 0 to 100, 0 being the lowest, that is companies not taking any initiative to meet ESG, and 100 companies meeting all the provisions under the ESG parameters. So, this concept for ESG rating providers was also implemented by SEBI. But having said so, please make a note of these particular points now. Point number 1, SEBI says You cannot have only one framework that you are applying for providing a rating for the companies in the Western market. You cannot have the same rating in India. Why? System is different. The situation is different. Requirements are different. And in case of India, even today, availability or accessibility to ESG data is not very much available right now. It's not very famous right now. It is taking place, but at a very slow pace. So keep that in the mind, because if you do not get the right data, correct data regarding reforms implemented by the company, you might simply come to a conclusion company is not implementing the reforms, and the rating could be very, very less. So these are certain very important points which have been mentioned in the article regarding the ESG. And please remember this, the BRSR regulations that I am talking about is not applicable to all the companies. SEBI right now says those companies which are top 1000 companies, top 1000 companies in terms of market capitalization, the listed top 1000 companies in terms of market capitalization, they will have to abide by the BRSR, and for remaining companies, it's an optional now, but SEBI simply says we would encourage them. We would simply basically ask these particular companies to adopt these guidelines, because if you adopt these guidelines, it will help you in raising funds in the market. It will improve your brand image in the market, etc. So those are the points here. MCQ assignment number 27, 3 statements are there. It is compulsorily applicable to all the listed companies. The framework came into force from 2013 with introduction of Companies Act. This has been introduced by the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. 3 statements. What is the right option? Just wait for a couple of more minutes. I will cover the answer to that. So next article, Chief Information Commissioner has asked railways to disclose a list of staff with disabilities. What is the issue here? Very recently, there was one issue that came to light, that is a civil servant submitting false data, allegation, false data to get selected in the UPSC Civil Services examination final list. Although the government of India has cancelled the candidature of the concerned person now, there is a rising concern which is being raised that similar practices have been used in other government examinations as well. One concern that was raised was, in case of railways, multiple people have falsely submitted the data regarding their disability. They are not claiming the right disability certificate, or they are not giving the right disability certificate. Many of them do not have disabilities. They have submitted a wrong certificate and they have got the quota seat. They have got the reserved seat which is supposed to go to the right person with disabilities, or right candidate here. So regarding that, under the information, let's say under the Right to Information Act, under the Right to Information Act, application was provided to provide information regarding how many people have been selected, how many people have been selected with a disability in railways in certain division, that is Southwestern Railways. But the Chief Public Relations Officer, the officer who is supposed to provide this information, has denied this, and the argument that has been put forward is very simple here. One, with this kind of a revealing of the information, it will lead to infringement of privacy of the officers. It will lead to infringement of the privacy of the officers. That is personal, certain personal information we are putting out in the public domain. It will violate the right to privacy here. And second issue is, what is the importance to the public related to this? What would be the impact of this on a common man when they will know, right, how many candidates have been selected claiming disability here? So there is no public importance. There is no public importance here. There is no public interest in all of this. So these were the reasons which were cited by the representative of the railways to deny, or basically to not provide the information that was asked from them. Now very recently, the the Central Information Commissioner has issued an order, and the order simply flags certain issues. That is, one, a candidate who has not been selected has every right to know who is the other candidate who has been selected claiming disability. They have every right to know. And second, when candidates will claim disability and get a job under the government quota like this, that information can be provided whenever such a request has been raised. And third point which has been flagged here is, with more and more concerns being raised in other government, let's say services, where fake certificates or fake documents are alleged to be provided to get jobs, it is better to have transparency before something of this nature happens in the railways as well. So these are the three reasons which have been cited by the Central Information Commissioner to direct the South Western Railways representative to provide the information regarding how many candidates have claimed disability and what are the names of the candidates, that is the details of the candidates. Okay. Next, right, snippets now. The government, that is the GST Council, not the government, GST Council has basically approved establishing the group of ministers to review GST rates on health and life insurance. Very recently, the 54th GST Council meeting took place, and in that particular meeting, one of the decisions that was taken was essentially to set up a group of ministers who by the end of October 30th, that is in a span of 50 days, will look at the issue of changing or let's say retaining the same rate of GST on the insurance products, life insurance and health insurance. So that particular committee, or the approval was given for establishing that committee. Now the GST Council has set up the committee. It's a 13-member group and it will be convened by Bihar Deputy Chief Minister Mr. Samrat Chowdhury, and they will be submitting the report by October 30. The order regarding this was issued yesterday. Okay. Now, last article for today, Sagar Parikrama. Sagar Parikrama. 2 naval officers will embark on the grueling blue water global voyage. What is a Sagar Parikrama? Essentially, the Indian Navy has started this initiative where certain candidates from the naval force will be identified. They will have to go through a particular process and they will go on a, right, let's say global voyage. And here, according to the data provided by the Navy, right now there are 8 sailors. There are 8 sailors who have completed, that is they have circumnavigated, and these are from India by the way, who have circumnavigated the world. And in addition to these 8 sailors, now 2 more women sailors are set to start the voyage in the coming days. In addition to this particular point, please remember one more point here. There are 2 vessels, right? Indian Navy INSV, Indian Navy sailing vessel INSV, which are mentioned in the context of circumnavigation here. One is basically INSV Madesi, Made, and the second one is INSV Tarini. And in this new circumnavigation exercise that will be conducted by these 2 naval officers, INSV Tarini will be used. Okay, so these are certain, let's say important points from the context of the prelims that can be asked on the concept of Sagar Parikrama. Done. So these are the various articles that I wanted to cover for today's session. Now let me solve the 2 questions very quickly. MCQ assignment number 26. If you want to solve it, please pause, solve it, and then earlier itself pause and solve it, and then you can see the model answer. Consider the following statements. DMF has been set up in all the states and UTs. Wrong statement. 23 states. 23 states we have set up the DMF. Second one, the composition and the function of the DMF is decided by the central government. Wrong, it is decided by the state government. Section 9B of the MMDR, Mines and Minerals Development and Regulation Act, provides for the establishment of DMF. It's a factual statement and the statement is correct by the way. So, right option for question number 26 will be option A, only one. And second, pause it, solve it, and then you can listen to the key answer. Consider the following statements regarding BRSR framework. Business Responsibility and Sustainability Reporting, BRSR framework. It is compulsorily applicable to all the listed companies? No, 1000. The framework, again 1000, which have the highest market capitalization. The framework has come into force from 2013. Wrong. This has been introduced by the Minister of Environment and Forest and Climate Change. Again wrong. It has been introduced by SEBI. And by the way, last question for you people now. assignment of a cert. Under which ministry do you think SEBI functions? I will repeat the statement. Under which ministry do you think SEBI functions? What is the right answer? Do let me know in the comment section. So, all the three statements are wrong here. Right option will be option D, none of the above. So, these are the questions as well as the articles that I wanted to cover from international edition of today's Hindu newspaper. Before I wind up, again a gentle reminder to all of you, starting today we are launching a new initiative where we are going to cover static portions of important subjects such as economy, polity, history, etc. The videos will be uploaded every Monday and Tuesday at 8 p.m. Please do not miss out watching the videos. And second, the GST controversy regarding the bun versus the cream bun, the video will be uploaded today in the afternoon. Please do watch it. All these initiatives are to help you ace the upcoming civil services examination. If you like these initiatives, do hit the like button, and if you are yet to subscribe to the channel, do it right now. Thank you. Have a great day.